What's up, Vinny? I am currently walking to the kitchen. I'm going to plug in my phone so that I can charge it. But I wanted to catch you up on some things and also respond to your last video because I thought you brought up a lot of really cool topics that I specifically wanted to talk about. So let me go grab my sheet of notes. Okay, I'm back. The magic of editing is going to make it seem like, that took me 0 seconds. In reality, it took me 2 minutes. And the paper ended up being in the trash can. I have no idea why it was in there. But I found it. Anyway, so how I've been doing, before I jump into response to your videos, I've been doing pretty well. Since making the video in Wisconsin, I have come back to Springfield, and I'm really trying to stay structured and disciplined, seeing as I don't have a job. I am actually following a couple videos that I'll link down below to help myself stay on track. One of them is made by this guy who followed, or at least formulated, what he thought based on journal entries and stuff like that. Marcus Aurelius's night routine would have been. So I've been sort of following that kind of stuff. It pretty much involves meditating every day, exercising in sort of the latter half of the day, if not in the early evening, doing these different journaling prompts. I can also link the video about the journaling prompts below that sort of keep you on track, not only to what you want to be doing, but how you feel while you're doing it. And I've been writing, an hour every day. I've been reading 3 to 4 hours a day. I've been doing yoga every morning. I've been trying to eat relatively well, and the next expense I've been trying to cut out is fast food. So my day-to-day life is a little bit boring. I'm about to go watch the Blues game. I think at the Adobe or Coyotes Adobe or whatever the fuck it's called. But other than that, I sort of have been living very like regimented. I don't fucking know, but I've been living very structured, and eventually I'm hoping, obviously, so I can have a fucking social life, to find opportunity for leeway and sort of find a way to condense how long it takes me to do all the things I want to be doing. But that's my main goal right now. And another thing I do is I make myself apply to, 1 to 2 Upwork gigs a day. I don't think I can actually support myself on Upwork, but I'm fortunate enough right now to be sitting on not like a lot of money, but I think like 1 to 2 months worth of living expenses, as I kind of try to I don't know, live how I want to live for a little while and sort of think things over. You and I talked a lot about, or at least I talked to you a lot about, how I'm not really someone who has thought about the grand scheme of things very often, because it's very easy for me to keep myself entertained, and to sort of find a lot of fulfillment in my day-to-day life. The things I do are things that I like to do, and I sort of always find ways to do them. So I wouldn't say I've been like soul searching. I'm more just like finding a way to accommodate patience. And if that sounds weird, it might make sense after watching those videos. I'm pretty much finding both patience and structure through living the way that I've been living. Any other major updates? Not really. I'll be back in St. Louis here in a couple days to watch my aunt's dog, and then I will be in Springfield again for a while. Me and Matt are going to watch the Blues game at his place on Sunday, which I think will be pretty fun because Matt loves hockey so much and all that good stuff. So anyway, to start responding to your video, I wanted to first say happy birthday to Vito. Vito, great guy, charismatic, hopeful, enthusiastic. It's always a pleasure to talk to Vito. Responding to your thoughts about job interviews, haircuts, and presentability. So for the most part, man, I thought your haircut looked fine. Don't don't be too hard on yourself. I'll always be a fan of the Vinny who had like 10 foot long hair that just dragged around on the floor. But no, I think you look fine, dude. And job interviews are so weird because I don't know. The first job interview I ever had was at Shoe Carnival, which was a job I did not get, which I blame on very tricky interview questions. Um, but I don't know, man. I tend to really like interviews, and I think that in some ways I like them because I view them as a bit of a performance. Like I just for some reason, even though I don't really like socializing and I prefer to sort of spend time alone, I think I have all the switches and like buttons that I can turn on to be a very social person. And when I'm in a job interview, I really just try to have a lot of fun and bring a lot of charisma and just like if they ask me a question, I immediately try to like turn it into some sort of narrative, some sort of like story that I'm telling. I don't know. I've always really liked job interviews, and I've obviously never had a super important job interview for something like at a fucking legitimate like 9 to 5. But I think in general, I've always really liked the chance to do interviews, even though they can be kind of nerve wracking. I've always kind of seen it as like, well, what am I nervous about? Like, fuck it. I'm not losing the job. I'm just trying to get it. And I also just, I guess, selfishly see myself as more interesting than anyone who could ever be interviewing me, which is probably not always the best thing to think. But I don't know that I believe it in my heart so much as I just think it in my brain to make myself entertaining and communicative. But on the subject of brains, you said that you had a dream where you were shitting, and that your dream brain and your ass brain were perhaps communicating, and different parts of the body sort of talking to each other in dreams. And I thought that was a really cool idea. It kind of makes me wonder of the times where I've like pissed in a dream but haven't pissed in real life, or like the times where I did piss in a dream when I was like really drunk, and then I was like, oh, I fucking pissed myself. Like, I don't know. Like, what's the difference between your piss brain and your dream brain, and when do they sort of link up? Like, if you'd woken up and you'd have like shit yourself, you'd probably be like, okay, well from now on, if I'm ever in a dream where I'm shitting, I'm gonna stop it like immediately because I like never want to shit. Um, I don't know. I also realized the other day that I've been lucid dreaming a lot again. I don't know if it's from kind of having a couple days of just being half asleep in the hotel room bed and stuff, and sort of being in and out, not really getting full on sleep. But I've noticed that I've been doing a lot of lucid dreaming, and not doing anything particularly interesting. I'll just like walk around and like put my arm through the wall. The other thing you mentioned, Pokemon. I don't know anything about the new Pokemon game. Is it a 3DS game? Or is it on Switch and 3DS? I don't really know. For my brain, every trio of starters since Ruby and Sapphire have looked the exact same, and I don't give a fuck about any of them. Um, and I mean, I guess the thing that's funny about Pokemon is like it is such a nostalgia machine for people our age, and it's always setting up the next generation for its dose of nostalgia as well. So on one hand, like my opinions about Pokemon are entirely informed by my nostalgia for Gold and Silver, and Red and Blue to a lesser extent. I didn't like play those when I was a kid. I just played, Gold, Silver, and Crystal when I was a kid, and then like Pokemon Yellow, which was fucking sick. Uh, but I don't know. It's interesting because like I think the new Pokemon look dumb, but really they don't look any dumber than like the Pokemon that I grew up with, you know. And then maybe arguments could be made, you know, people are always like, "Oh, there's a Pokemon that's an ice cream cone." And like I get that and that's dumb, but I don't know. I also just don't really like the new art style in general. Something about it I don't know. The Pokemon all seem like robotic rock creatures that aren't real or something. I don't know. I kind of liked the old designs and how they really did look like reimagined versions of animals. It kind of provides the sense of realism to me that I think any fantasy world or even science fiction world, like no matter how fucking weird you get, there's always got to be something that sort of connects the player of the game or the reader of the book or the watcher of the movie or like whatever. There always has to be something that sort of grounds us. And I think when I see the new Pokemon, I'm not seeing them as like creatures that a child would find and train. I'm seeing them as like weird cartoon aliens that have no realistic connection to their environments. And again, this is all just sort of biased and very based in my nostalgia for the older games, but like, you know, sometimes people will also say, well, you know, you look at the fucking old Pokemon and they were just ducks and cats and dogs and they just looked like a dog with like fire on its head. And I think I get that point too. It's like maybe in certain ways the newer Pokemon are more creative in a sense, but like I said, for my money, man, for my Pokemon dollars, I kind of like the older designs better. I also liked the sense I liked the old rivals. I liked the sense that you were more like a kid on your own out in the world. In the new games, it's like everyone fucking likes you and just fucking sucks your dick the whole time and like wants you to do well and you're some kind of like set up to be some fucking prodigy. Like what I liked about the older games, and or I guess what I like about the older games is sometimes you need an NPC to like help you on a quest, and you know you haven't triggered like X event yet, and they won't even give you the fucking time of day. They're just like, get out of my face, you fucking dumb asshole 10-year-old. Like I don't want to fucking talk to you, dog. And you're just like, yeah, I mean I can't blame him. I'm just a piece of shit 10-year-old, so I'm gonna have to go find that quest item and convince this dude. Like I don't know. I really liked the world building in the old Pokemon games. And then in Ruby and Sapphire, I'm fighting these like ancient ocean gods for the fate of the world, and I'm just like, fuck this. I don't know. It just doesn't grab me. I guess in the same way as the older games. Let's see. Oh, the Watchmen reboot and comics. Man, I wish I remembered why I'd written comics down here. Oh, I kind of remember now. No, I don't remember. But as far as the Watchmen remake, so I think Damon Lindelof is writing that. He's the guy who he was one of the showrunners for Lost, and I have no idea really what direction the Watchmen remake is going in. I think it's gonna tell, you know, like generally the same story as far as like maybe themes or whatever and some of the major arcs of the characters. But I don't really know what the fuck they're doing with it. And you know, Damon Lindelof, for as much as like season 6 of Lost is sort of just seen as this, you know, kind of bullshit thing, and talking about the finale of Lost, even if you haven't seen the show, you can always cite it as something that was just kind of very divisive or very polarizing. I think Damon Lindelof, to an extent, is really, really good at world building and at sort of see. I want to say he's good at building mystery and suspense, but at the same time, it's like you can build mystery and suspense all day, and if you don't really lead us to anything, it kind of feels like you got cheated, and that's definitely how a lot of people felt with Lost. So I think I'm hopeful for the remake or whatever of Watchmen because I think Damon Lindelof knows a lot about comics and knows a lot about world building and a lot about just making characters compelling, sort of taking different archetypes and turning them into something interesting. Like I think about the main cast of Lost and how season 1 is all about setting them all up as these certain archetypes or stereotypes, and by the end of the season, none of them are sort of what you thought they were. And then in some ways they are, which also just makes them even more human at that point. And then connecting that to Watchmen, I think of how Watchmen is sort of, making all these statements about heroes and superheroes and stereotypes and the archetype of what a hero is. And in a way, a lot of the main cast of Watchmen are stock characters. I mean, that's literally what they were before Alan Moore got them. They were these leftover characters that DC had never used for anything. And Alan Moore was like, hey, I'll take the characters, but I'm going to do whatever the fuck I want with them. And so you have all these really interesting characters who, at a first glance, because of the way superheroes are designed, we sort of see them as what they might be. But as the story unfolds, none of them are really quite what they seem. So um, I don't know. I'm hopeful with Damon Lindelof. I'm always hopeful with him. He's an interesting guy. I think he's kind of an asshole. I think he's kind of one of those people who he wants to be rewarded for his bold decisions in storytelling, but at the same time, he doesn't want to face criticism for them. So we'll see. Um, we will see how that goes. As far as you asked what my initial stance on tarot cards were and what changed, and what is my outlook on it now. And I really liked what you said, which is you can let whatever you want tell you what you want. Wait, you can let whatever you want tell you what to do. And I think my appeal to stuff like tarot and stuff like astrology, like in the past 3 to 4 years, I think what I like about it is like it's more life aiding than it is life ruling. Um, so like yes, I'm sure there are like some people who when they read their horoscope, they try to follow it exactly, or when they get a tarot card reading, they like freak out or try to change their lives or whatever. But I sort of see it as the same way as like fundamental religious people versus people who just sort of practice religion for whatever benefits it gives them in their own life. For example, the same person who will be like, "Can you believe people actually read these zodiac things in the newspaper and believe them?" is the same guy who arbitrarily goes to church every weekend and turns his brain off and does nothing while he's there. You know what I mean? And so that's what I like about astrology and tarot, which is like if you look at the tarot cards, the descriptions about them and even the images on them are designed in a way to help you make meaning of things. You don't necessarily have to be like, this is telling my future or this is telling capital T truth, but these are just like semantic devices. They're semantic means to different ends to help us put a map over our lives, to help us understand what's sort of going on in front of us. If you are sort of kicking around a lot of stress about relationships and you read your horoscope and it says something vague, but to you it helps you sort out your feelings about a relationship, I think it's done what it's meant to do. Sometimes I think the same forgiveness we allow fundamental religion, we don't also allow to other things. Like very few people in the church believe everything that they hear while they're in mass, right? But they don't call themselves out on that. But again, the same people will look at tarot and be like, oh, what do you believe? All this shit going on. It's like, maybe I don't believe, maybe I do. I think it just helps me understand what's going on around me, which I mean, is really, I guess, what spirituality is supposed to be. If we imagine really old humans, right, sort of discovering crops and planting crops, they don't know what the fuck rain is, and they don't know why rain makes things grow. So that's why they thank the sky, right? Spirituality has always just helped us understand the world around us. And then maybe over time they start to understand, okay, yes, it is the rain that falls that helps the crops grow. But they don't know really what the fuck's going on scientifically, so now they designate a sun god and a rain god, right? Like spirituality has always helped us address the question marks of life. And for me, my interest in tarot and my interest in astrology is really, again, I think because of my Catholic background and because of how all that ended up playing out for me, I really prefer the sort of life aiding or life enhancing versions of spirituality instead of these life ruling versions. You will end up in hell. You need to end up in heaven. You must feel this way. This is what morality is. Um, I think in some ways, if we want to critique the alleged vagueness of a tarot reading or of an astrology reading, we could also look at a text like the Bible and understand it comes from Hebrew, which is an incredibly divisive language in translation, incredibly confusing. Some letters are numbers, some words mean have multiple meanings. We also then have Constantine, who essentially reissued, reformatted, and even retranslated the whole Bible at a certain point in history, whenever the fuck he was alive. So if we're holding this thing in our hands, the Bible, and we're critiquing other things for being vague, I think we have a lot of other questions to address first about what we value in our source material and what we sort of prioritize in a reading of source material. But things like tarot, I think in Western society will always be on the fringe intellectually and spiritually, and I don't think that that's going to change anytime soon. Even though we're definitely seeing a spike in its marketability, I don't know that we'll ever see it um, become mainstream socially in the sense that people sort of prioritize it to the same extent that they do some facet of Christianity. But anyway, to boil all that down into a simpler answer, my initial stance on it was that it was silly. I was one of those people who liked to say, "What do you think that's like telling your future?" And I kind of like got off on that. Like I think a lot of young people do when they are first introduced to like the fact that they're mini adults and have brains. You know, they like to point out what's wrong about everybody else. And I think that was me for a while. I think I really liked to hate on things like astrology, almost kind of got off on it. Um, but as time went on, I started to realize some of the value in it. There are times, and I don't know how much I can really say to how true any of it is. I just don't know enough about it research wise. I do think it's interesting that many of our religions visually and metaphorically begin in the sky with the sun, the moon, the stars, constellations, and how people interpret them, how that affects a culture's artwork, how that affects a culture's storytelling. Much of these things come from the sky itself and from the placement of the stars. And that's what astrology is all about, right? So I think that's really interesting. But yeah, for me, I think humans always need some sort of spiritual connection. And I think that in some ways it should be as specific as possible. I don't think you get very far just calling yourself a spiritual person. I think it helps to have certain tenets or certain things that you use to navigate the spiritual realm in whatever way that matters to you. Um, but I also think people have a certain responsibility to understand their spiritual path and to not. Um, what do I mean by this? What do I mean by responsibility? I think it's easy to abuse. So, for example, I don't really like lazy agnostic people. Um, or I don't like when people use their lazy agnosticism to make a point. If you just want to be agnostic because you don't, you think maybe there's a God, but you don't really want to think about it, that's cool with me. But if you're going to use that same lazy approach to agnosticism to like make someone else feel bad about believing in God or make someone else feel overly cynical for not believing in God, like if you're going to throw that hat into the ring, then I want you to be responsible for what you're saying and really tell me what that means to you day to day and what that means for you spiritually. Because there's a chance it means nothing, in which case, don't say anything about it, right? Like, I think we are all responsible for our spiritual and intellectual paths. And I think that's maybe what I've been trying to get at this whole time is that for me, there became a point where that could not be Catholicism. The things that I started to see as important, the things that I started to see as true, the things I started to see as valuable and helpful were not things that I could find there. And I think learning the tarot card deck and kind of getting into astrology for fun and sort of having fun with these things. I think that's what I was always looking for. I was never looking to spirituality for an answer. I think I always wanted to see it as a way to challenge my intellect, to have fun with my intellect, to have fun with semantic meaning making, um, to just, I don't know, throw some wrenches into my neuroplasticity and like keep myself seeing things in a different way all the time. And I don't know, I've come to really enjoy keeping up with my weekly astrological readings, and I've come to really enjoy learning a tarot card every day. Um, and I think these things give me peace of mind and help me understand my life, which is, I guess, what spirituality should always be doing anyway. Um, Last thought: what I like about these things versus mainstream religion is I always feel that specifically the Abrahamic religions are always trying to tell people what to do and how to think, um, and what to think about other people and what to do to other people and how to treat them, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And man, that's just exhausting to me. I kind of just like something where the pieces are in front of me and I get to play with them. Um, anyway, hopefully I've given you enough here to sort of respond to in your video. It's okay if you think I'm full of bullshit and I'm a big dummy. But yeah, tell me what you think about all this stuff, because I know we both obviously know people separately and know people mutually who are very into talking about these types of things and are very passionate about these sorts of things. We all know people who are sort of the I'm spiritual person, and we also know people who are very religious and people who are very not religious. And just thinking of some of our shared social groups, you know. So, what are your thoughts on this stuff? And don't feel like any of it's gonna sound silly. Like, I know that you and I sort of see a lot of it as silly, like at the end of the day. But as far as parsing out your feelings about it, I encourage you to go all in. Because this has been a pretty long video for me. I don't even. This is like the first one that's actually like podcast length. I'll go in and clip some things out of it. But anyway, I'm gonna go ahead to the bar, and I'll talk to you soon. See ya. Take care, man.